Hello, my dear students and the rest of the learners. Welcome to part 2 of C++ computer programming series, in which we are going to learn about the structure of a C++ program. My name is Meme JM, or you can simply call me Emily Swap. Whenever you code a C++ program, there is a specific structure or format that you must follow. The following is thus a detailed explanation on how to code a C++ program, indicating the basic elements of the structure and how to code them. Number 1, always make the code readable by inserting into it some comments, indicating what the program or a part of a program is doing. A comment is a brief description of what the program or a section of source code does. It also makes debugging easy because a programmer is able to identify the section of code that performs a certain task and debug it. Each line of a comment statement in C++ is preceded by the symbol for comments, which is a pair of slashes. For example, if you want to have or to include a comment within your source code, like for identifying the name of the program, then you can include the statement // file name welcome.cpp. You can also have another comment, like for example, introduction a program. The most important thing to remember is that whenever you want to add a comment within your source code, you must precede it by typing double or a pair of slashes. What this simply tells the compiler is to skip that statement from being compiled or simply from being executed. That statement is ignored during compilation, and therefore your comments can be in any language. Number 2, always supply a special non-C++ command that supply your compiler with the additional information and prepare your source code for compiling before the compiler receives it. These non-C++ commands are called preprocessor directives. A preprocessor directive is used to include special system files, which we call the header files, that help C++ program or C++ compiler interpret the many built-in functions that we want to use. So the work of the header files is to contain certain definitions of certain type of functions that your program may require at one point or another. These commands begin with a pound sign, or preprocessor directives begin with a pound sign. Sometimes it can be called a hash sign. An example of such a directive, a preprocessor directive, is what we call hash include. Hash include is a preprocessor directive that is used to merge a disk file into a source program. An example of such file is IOStream, which stands for Input Output Stream header, which provides the compiler with information about the built-in input and output operators such as cin and cout, respectively. My dear students and the rest of the learners, kindly note, if you are going to read any input from your screen or from your keyboard, if you are going to enter any value into a program through your keyboard, or at one point or another, you'll be required to display some statements on your screen or some results on your screen, then you have to include the preprocessor directive called hash include iostream.h. Where necessary, because that is the file which contains a C in and a C out. And for that reason, you must include #include statement. Its format is usually written as follows: #include, then file name. The syntax remains. For example, #include iostream or #include iostream.h. I for input, or for output, the stream. And for Visual Studio 2010 and the later versions of C++, you may not really have .h, but others may have .h, like Microsoft Visual Studio 6.0. In that case, it's always going to write your outstream without .h, but if it is generated as an error when you compile, you write it with .h to indicate it's a header file. For some advanced versions of C++, don't require the extension .h, just as I've said, to be included, and may be treated as an error if included. So a stream, when you talk about a stream is an object which performs input and output. Number 3, you can also include a declarative region that is called namespace in your program. And the work of namespace in your program is to provide a scope to the identifiers, that is, names of types, functions, variables, amongst others that are inside it, and organize the code into logical groups and prevent name collisions that may occur, especially if your code base includes multiple libraries. An example of a namespace is the standard library std, which is declared as follows: using namespace std semicolon. Remember, every statement in C++ for declaration, or most of the statements in C++, will always be terminated with a semicolon. And therefore, for the namespace, it's always going to have it as using space namespace space std for standard library, using namespace standard or standard library. This statement using namespace, std tells the compiler that the program may use names for objects and variables from the standard library. All C++ standard library types and functions are declared in the standard namespace. Number 4, always inform the compiler the point from which it should commence execution of the instructions in the program by including a line which defines the main function, which is mandatory form or mandatory for every C++ program. The instructions in this function are always the first to be executed. Therefore, it is the main function that controls the overall flow of execution of instructions for the entire program. What is the name or what is the format of this main statement? The format for this statement is as follows: return type main. Then we have the opening parentheses, optional arguments, and the closing parentheses. For example, int main in parentheses void. Every C++ program must have the main function. It is this main function that is coded using this statement. Int main. It can also be another type, like void instead of int, but you must have main function and the parentheses. The return type, like int, is the value which the main function is expected to return. For example, int for a whole number, or void if the main function is not expected to return any value. So if the main function is not going to return any value, then you can replace the word int in this statement with void. So it can read as void main. And then inside the parentheses, you can have it as empty, or you can have the word void or any other type if the function is receiving some parameters. Main, the term main, is the reserved one for the main function in every C++ program. And it's always followed by a pair of parentheses because it's a function declaration. Within the parentheses, you may or may not add arguments. Arguments are those values that have been enclosed within the parentheses. This statement can thus be coded as follows. You can have it as int main, meaning that this is a function that is expected to return a value of type integer, that is, whole number, and it is not receiving any parameter from anywhere. You may also have it as int main, then when you close the word void inside the parentheses. Now, this statement and this one are similar. They are doing the same thing because void simply means nothing which is being received by the function. You can also have it as void main with empty parentheses. This simply means that this function called main, which is the main function for any C++ program, is not going to return any value anywhere to any caller. So it has no caller. And then we have void main, void. Now this statement and this one are similar. It simply means that this function called main is not receiving any parameter. That is why the word void is enclosed in parentheses, and it is not expected to return any value. That's why it is the word void. And you can have other formats. If you expect the function to remain a character or to return a character, then you have to replace int with char. If it is going to return a value which is as a fraction, that is float, then you may have another data type, as we are going to learn about data types in part 3 of the series on variable declarations and data types. The next section of your program, or the next requirement for any C++ program, is to set the body for your main function. Now, the set of instructions within the body of the main function, which we call main, must always be enclosed between the left or opening brace, which looks as follows, and a writing brace or a closing brace, which is written as follows. The left brace informs the compiler where to begin executing the instructions within the body, while the right brace marks the end of a program or block execution. Simply put, whenever you are writing a C++ program, once you have written the main function, as for example, void main, then with the pair of parentheses, the next thing that must be below that line or statement is the opening brace, and then followed by the set of instructions that you want your main function to execute. And then once you are through with the set of instructions to be executed, you have to close the body of that main program with a closing brace. So the pair of braces, the opening brace and the closing brace, usually marks the beginning and the end of the body of the main function. It's always found also in most of the functions. Number 6, whenever a program will require a value to be stored in a memory location for later reference, it is always important to inform the compiler what type of data will be stored so that it can then set aside memory that will be adequate for the expected value. In addition, the memory set aside will require the programmer to give them a name for ease of identification whenever it will be required. If the content of the memory will be changed based on what is entered, then that is referred to as a variable, and the entire activity is called variable declaration. Therefore, a variable declaration indicates the type of data to be stored in a memory location, assigned a name such as Gina. So, variables are declared in a program if the programmer needs to build or to hold any data for use in performing a processing task during processing execution. For example, the following is a variable declaration statement in a C++ program, like car, Gina, 20 enclosed in the square braces or brackets with a semicolon. Every declaration statement in C++, as you are going to learn in the subsequent presentation, it must be terminated with a semicolon. This statement is for setting a memory location aside called Gina, which is to be used to store an array of 20 characters, meaning that the name whose maximum number of characters should not exceed 20. So simply, that is how you declare a variable within your source code. And we are going to learn more about declarations of variables and the variable declarations presentation, which is part 3 of the series. Therefore, make sure that you go through or you visit MLSWAP ICT YouTube channel and go through part 3 of the series, where you are going to learn more about how to declare variables in a C++ program. And declaration statement must always be terminated with a semicolon. Number 7, whenever you want your program to display some message that tells the user what is expected from him or her, or to display on the screen some values from memory, you have to write an output that makes use of the cout operator. This function is read as cout. What is cout? Cout is an operator which sends data to the standard output device, which is usually the console or the screen. In other words, if, my dear students and the rest of the learners, you are going to be displaying any text on your screen or any message on your screen, you must always make use of the cout operator. And that's why we have said, due to the fact that the definitions of this function for the cout and the cin are usually found in the file that we call iostream, that's why we have said you should always include that file in your program. And the hash include iostream.h or iostream. Therefore, cout stands for console out. C for console, and the console is a computer screen. Out simply means to write or to display the content. The format for cout statement is either as follows: cout, then that operator, then string of ones in quotes. That means, or you use this statement when you want to display a set of ones or a string of ones that have not been stored in the memory. Or you can pick value which is in the memory and display it out on the screen. So you pick data and place it on your monitor. Cout, then we have that operator, and data And my dear students, the rest of the learners note that every cout statement must be terminated with a semicolon. The operator, that one, is called an insertion operator or an output operator. What is the work of insertion operator or output operator in a statement? This operator takes an output stream as its left operand and an expression as its right operand, and it causes the value of the latter to be sent to the former. For example, the following statements are for displaying text that has not been stored in a memory location. For example, cout. Remember, this operator, we are calling it insertion operator. It inserts the message on the monitor for you to be able to read. So we have cout followed by the insertion operator, and then double quotes. You write your message there. Habari, jina langu ni Emily Swap. Karibu na ujisikie nyumbani. Then a backslash n. That is called new line operator, as you are going to see. Then you close the message with double quotes and semicolon. I'll show you an output of this program and see how it behaves. We also have another statement like cout, and then when you close the message, na wewe unaitwa nani? The syntax is key. My dear students, the rest of the learners, remember, write your statements exactly as you can see. Every message that is not data stored in memory must always be enclosed in double quotes, because that's a string. And if you want the message to be displayed and the cursor is taken to the next line, that's when you put backslash n. It's a single character, which we call an escape sequence character for a new line. So it's a new line operator. While the following statement combines an output for data that has been retrieved from a memory location called Gina and a string of ones that are just for interaction purpose and have not been stored in memory. So in this statement here, for cout, we can see cout, then we have the insertion operator, Gina, insertion operator. So what this statement simply means, it is telling the compiler to pick the message, feel comfortable, and enjoy learning C++ through Emily Swap ICT channel, together with the name or the content of the memory location called Gina, and display them on the monitor, cout. Pick what is on the right and display it on the left. That means pick the content of memory location called Gina, whatever that has been stored there, display it, followed with the message, feel comfortable and enjoy learning C++ through Emily Swap ICT channel, and then move the cursor one line below. For example, if the content of Gina was meme, so if the value meme had been entered in the memory location called Gina, then what will happen is that this operator will pick, or the compiler will pick, the content of memory location called Gina, for example, meme, and then it will display the message, meme, comma, feel comfortable and enjoy learning C++ through Emily Swap ICT YouTube channel. So that message will be displayed on the console, on the screen that they cout. The escape sequence character for a new line, just as I've said, is backslash n. It's used to inform the compiler to move the cursor to the next line once displaying text in the current line has been done. It is usually optional, but good for making text displayed on the screen be readable per line. Any text to be displayed on the screen without having been stored in a memory location should always be enclosed in double quotes. However, data being retrieved from memory, for example, Gina, is not enclosed in quotes. Every cout statement should always be terminated with a semicolon. Number 8, whenever you would like to read a value entered by the user or receive a value entered through the keyboard and store it in the declared memory, you have to write an input statement, which is composed of the cin operator, whose syntax is usually as follows. So we have cin, then we have what we call the extraction operator, a value. What this statement simply means is that the extraction operator, which is usually used together with cin, will be used to read variables from the keyboard. So simply, this statement means pick the value that has been entered through the keyboard and store it in the memory location called value. In the memory location called value, pick the content that has been entered by the user through the keyboard and store it in the memory location called value. So cin stands for console input, and in this case, console is keyboard. An example of how to use cin for an input statement is as follows. Cin extraction operator, GINA, semicolon. Note, every cin statement must always be terminated with a semicolon. Now, this statement is read as follows. Read the data entered by the user through the keyboard, which should be of type character, and store that value in the memory location called GINA, whose maximum size should not exceed 20 characters. Why am I saying should not exceed 20 characters? It simply means that you have already declared GINA. As you can see, let's see where the declaration is. You remember, we already declared that a variable. Let's see, here it is. This statement was for declaration. We declared, or we set the memory location assigned called GINA, which is supposed to hold an array of characters. And those characters should not exceed 20. Now that we set the memory location assigned called GINA to hold characters, an array of characters or a name that should not exceed 20 characters, then what we are now doing with this statement of cin is to assign the value that is being entered by the user through the keyboard into that memory location called GINA. And just as you have seen, whatever that is entered through the keyboard and being stored in memory location called GINA should not exceed 20 characters. What about if you type more than 20 characters? What will happen? The compiler, because the memory is set assigned for maximum of 20 characters, an extra character will be ignored. So cin operator or cin statement is mostly used for the purpose of reading whatever that is being entered through the keyboard and storing it in the already set aside memory location, what we are calling a variable. If you want to print a blank line on your screen, you can write an output statement with a new line operator only as indicated, for example, in a line, like in the program which I'm going to show you. And that is usually written as follows. So this statement is for writing a statement that is blank on the screen. You are writing a new line, and that's how you do it. To terminate a program's execution and take control back to the computer's operating system for the main function of the calling program, you have to include the return statement in your code before the closing brace. My dear students, the rest of the learners, what this statement means is that whenever you are writing your C++ program and you have the main function which of course controls how your program is going to flow. By the end of those set of instructions, you are supposed to have a return statement. The work of this return statement is to take the control back the calling program or back the operating system. Take the control back the calling function or back the operating system. It tells the C++ program that the instructions in a function have completed execution and the control can be taken back to the calling function. Now, this statement can be written in any of the following formats. If under the main function, you did not have a data type, a return data type, for example, if it was void, then this statement can just be return because there's no value which you are returning. So return with a semicolon. The same, you return the syntax as I've written it. So this means that there is no value being sent back to the caller, and it is usually used to terminate a program or a function that has no return type. In other words, the return type was void. That means the main function was reading as void main, opening and closing parentheses, opening and closing embrace somewhere. Simply, the main function was coded as void main with an opening and closing parentheses. In this case, this statement becomes optional and can be omitted, like in a situation where return type is void. So in other words, if the return type for the main function is void, then you can include the statement return at the end of your set of instructions in that function. You can just ignore the word return or that statement return altogether. For example, as I have said, if the main function was void main with the opening and closing parentheses, then when you are writing your set of instructions, there the last set of instructions within the main function, the return with a semicolon, or you can omit it altogether. You can also have it as return 0. Now, the value 0 indicates that the program has ended successfully and the control should be returned to the operating system. In this case, usually where you have returned 0, the return type for this main function must have been int. So if you hand it as int main, meaning the return type was int, was integer, then you can return a 0. So you have the last statement as return 0 with a semicolon. Now, this 0 can even be enclosed in parentheses, as you can see in number C. Now, in this case, parentheses is included around the return value, especially when you want to return an expression. So in other words, if your function is returning an expression to the calling function, then you can enclose that expression within the parentheses. So within the parentheses, it's not a must that you have 0. You can have any other value or any other expression. So the following is an example of a program for welcoming the user to C++ programming, and it indicates the basic format or structure of a C++ program. My dear students and the rest of the learners, you can copy this program just as it is. You can type it just as it is in your or using your C++ program, and then you execute it following the procedures that I explained in part 1 of this series. So let's go through each of these lines and see what they mean. Now, this first statement is a comment. So this is how you add the comments in your program. So whenever you are writing a program, in order to make it readable, you can always have a comment line. And to write the comment, which can even be in any language, you use the 2 or the double 1 slashes like that. Then whatever that follows can be in any language. So this is a comment statement. The next is if you are going to use an input or output device within your presentation, or you want your program to read something from the keyboard or display it using the monitor, then you have to include this preprocessor directive. This is called a preprocessor directive. Now, this preprocessor directive simply means we are taking a file called outstream that contains the definition of the functions for that are related to input and output streaming. And then we are making those functions be part of our program. So we are making a compiler to be aware of those functions in advance. So those functions in the file called outstream are being made to be part and parcel of our code. So we're including that file, that header file that contains those definitions of those input and output functions into a program using this preprocessor directive #include outstream. So every C++ program that's going to make use of the monitor or is going to make use of the keyboard should have this statement included, this preprocessor directive #include outstream. And that's how you write it. You must code it as it is. That's the syntax. Next is using namespace std. I've already explained what that means. Using namespace standard. So this is standard library. And you code it as you can see. Remember, for preprocessor directive statements, we don't have a semicolon to terminate it. But for using namespace standard, you can see I have a semicolon. That's declaration. It's a declaration statement. Then that is a comment. That's how you write comments using the 2// symbols. Now, every program in C++ must have the main function. In our case, our function is main, and it has a return type of type integer. So it is int main. And then we have enclosed the one devoid in the parentheses. Simply, it means that this function called main is supposed to return the value to the caller or return the value back to the operating system, return the control back to the operating system. And that control will be indicated using a whole value or an integer, but it is receiving no value. So that's where we have the one devoid and closed in parentheses. So there are no parameters which are being received by this function from anywhere. Every program in C++ must have the main function. Now, to indicate that it is a function with a set of statements, we have to enclose those statements under the opening brace. So this opening brace here indicates the starting point of execution of our statements or instructions within the main function. So you must always have this symbol there, the brace. Remember, you have called it the opening brace. Then, if there are memory locations that we need set aside, you have to declare them. So there's a declaration statement. Always remember, you declare your variables before you use them, and we are going to learn more about that in our last part of this series. So this is a declaration statement that is speaking memory locations assigned. Is speaking a memory location or memory locations assigned, which are supposed to hold the value of type character. So it is picking a setting memory location assigned that can accommodate an array of characters, 20 characters together. And those memory locations that have been put together, that have been put together form what we call an array. And they have been given one word, Gina. So those memory locations for storing 20 characters are identified using the word Gina. That is variable name. So car is the data type to be stored in memory location called Gina. Then we have cout. Habari, jina langu ni Emily Swap, karibu na mjisikie nyumbani. So that's an output statement. It is going to be displayed on the screen as it is. Then the next statement is, na wewe unaitwa nani? So, my dear students and rest of the learners, note, whatever is enclosed in double quotes belongs to you. The compiler is not interested in understanding what it is. By the virtue of having those opening and closing quotes, it is able to know that that is a string of characters that have not been stored anywhere, or a string that has not been stored anywhere. So these ones can be in any language. Then cin. Now, once this statement is invoked, after the user has seen this statement, now wewe unaitwa nani? Because this message will be displayed on the screen, then it will give the user an opportunity to enter or type his or her name. So whatever that will be typed through the keyboard will be stored or be taken and be stored in the memory location called Gina. So whatever that has been entered using this statement will be stored in the memory location called Gina, whose number of characters should not exceed 20. And then from there, whatever that has been stored in memory location called Gina will be picked from the memory and be displayed on the screen, followed by the name, feel comfortable and enjoy learning C++ programming through a Mediswap ICT YouTube channel message. And then from there, this statement will write a blank line on the screen. Then the program ends with a return 0, meaning that the main function has completed whatever it was doing, and it's now time to take back the control of the operating system. That's what return 0 means. And then you end the program with the closing brace. So that is the structure of a C++ a program. So let's see how the output for this program will look like if we code it and run it using Microsoft Visual Studio 2010 C++ program. So what we are going to do, I'll just copy this program and paste it in our editor. My dear students, the rest of the learners, it is good for you to copy this program as it is. Write it in your exercise book and then type it on your C++ editor. Compile it and run it. Remember, the syntax is key. Write it as it is. So let's see how this program or this program's output will look like. So for us to be able to code our program and execute it, we can proceed as follows. You click on Start menu and then look for Microsoft Visual C++, a program. Like I have Microsoft Visual C++ 2010 Express. Remember, you can load any other program that you want to use for C++. It's not a must that it be 2010, but the code of the program will remain just as you have seen. From there, we can click on File menu, then point on New, and click a project. Under this screen, I'll click on Win32 and click on Win32 Console Application. Then under that, under File Name or under Name, I can type Welcome. That is Welcome, a project. I select Create Directory for Solution. Then I click OK. If I'm told another one exists, I can change the location, or the name. Let me call it Welcome to. Then I can click OK. From there, under Welcome to Win32 application, I can click below here, Next. And application settings, I can choose console application, then empty project, and I click on Finish. Then we have to wait. From there, because we want to write our program, our source file, you click on Source Files, right click on it, point on Add, and click New Item. Because we wanted to code our program and I install the templates, we click on the code. Then I will click on C++, a file. Then I can type the name here. For example, welcome to. And then I can click on Add button. You can see that on our screen, we have welcome to .cpp. What I'm going to do is, let me copy my program, the one that I've already coded, instead of taking time to code it afresh due to time. Then I can select on the copy. Remember, you can always write your C++ program using any editor, including Word, as long as you adhere the correct format. And then once you are on your editor or your program, you can right click anywhere and then you just click on the paste. Once you click on the paste, you can then organize your program to look the way you want. Note, I'm not changing the code anywhere. So that's our program. And this is how you code it. So once you have started your editor, you can just type this program just as I have explained it. You can format it the way you want, like that. And then, of course, you need to click on Save button to save your work. So that's our program. We have already coded it. The next step is to compile the program. Now, to compile, you can click on Build and then build a solution. If you're using other versions of C++, you can still click on Compile or Build, then Compile. So let me click on Build Solution. And then you wait. You always wait as the solution is being built or as the compilation takes place. My dear students and the rest of the learners, you can see that our compilation has been successful. So my program has no errors. Therefore, my dear students and the rest of the learners, if you can copy this program as it is, understand every statement, what it does, and how you write it, then it's my expectation that when you code it in your computer using your C++ program, it should not generate any error. If you find any error, you go through the set of statements that you have written, compare them with mine, and see where your error is. So our program has been successfully compiled, meaning that this source code has been successfully translated an object, a code. The next step is then, because you have compiled it and it has no errors, the next step is to run it. So let me click on Debug menu, and then you run by clicking on Start without debugging. So let me click on Start without debugging. Good. My dear students and the rest of the learners, look at this statement here. This is my output. The first statement on my program was reading cout. Habari, jina langu ni Emily Swap. Karibu na ujisikie nyumbani. You can see that after running the program, that statement is already being displayed on output screen as the first statement. Habari, jina langu ni Emily Swap. Karibu na ujisikie nyumbani. Na wewe unaitwa nani? You can see the same way I've explained. If you have \n, that's the new line operator, the cursor will blink below that line. Now, what is happening here? The compiler is waiting for us to enter our name. So let me type, for example, name. That is the content. If I press enter, this value will be picked and be stored in memory location called Gina. And then the next statement below it will be executed. So what we expect to see after I press enter is to see another statement which will read Gina, that is meme. Pick what is memory location called Gina. In this case, what will be there is meme. So meme will be picked, be displayed on the screen. And then it will be followed by a comma and the message, feel comfortable and enjoy learning C++ programming through Emily Shop ICT YouTube channel. And the cursor will be blinking below it. So the output statement that we expect to see on our screen here is feel comfortable and enjoy learning C++ programming language or programming through C++ ICT or through Emily Shop ICT YouTube channel. Let me click or press on enter and see. Great. You can see this line here. This line. The line see out Gina and all of that statement has been displayed. Meme, feel comfortable and enjoy learning C++ programming through Emily Shop ICT YouTube channel. And we can see the cursor is blinking there and we are being told to press any key to continue. So once we press, you are going to be taken back to our source code. So let me click or let me press enter key. Great. And that's how you write a C++ program. That is the structure or the format of a C++ program. And that is how you code a C++ program. And with that, my dear students and the rest of the learners, we have come to the end of part 2 of the series in which we have learned about the format or structure of a C++ program. You can now continue, listen to part 3 of the series of tutorials in which we are going to learn about how to declare variables and data types. Congratulations, therefore, for learning part 2 in C++ computer programming series by the title A Structure of a C++ Program. You can access the rest of the parts in this series as well as other computer or ICT videos by clicking or tapping on Emily Shop ICT YouTube channel below this video. To subscribe to the channel, tap on subscribe button below this video in YouTube if it's not currently reading as subscribed. For any further correspondence, kindly write it to us through the email emilyshop@gmail.com. Thank you very much for listening to me. Let's meet in part 3 of this series, and God bless.